Hey guys, let's talk about books. I am gonna try and keep the waffle to a minimum today because I'm desperate for a cuppa before I go to work and I am fast running out of time. That's pretty much what I do when I'm not reading is I go to work or I have just come home from work or I'm getting ready to go to work, which I feel is just the adulting experience. I don't need to explain it to you. Instead, let's talk about books. This week I finished the book that I was talking about last week, What Moves the Dead by T. Kingfisher. So this was a retelling of The Fall of the House of Usher by Edgar Allan Poe, which I did read as well after I finished this one. And I like What Moves the Dead better. It's just is longer, it expands on the character, it gives a voice to the only female character in Poe's original and adds a female character. It adds a non-binary character. That's the main character, Alex Easton. And it, unlike the Poe, it gives you a reason that these horror things are happening and a resolution in, I guess it's spoilers, but not really spoilers to say, the literal fall of the literal house of the Ushers. So that was cool. It's definitely horror. There was at least one moment in there where I was like squirming because I didn't want to read what was happening on the page. It was quite uncomfortable. Talks about animal death in particular, that scene was, and I loved it. It was great. I'll talk about what I bought in a minute, but I did buy the sequel to that, which has some of the same characters. It has Alex Easton, the main character who was the visitor who came to visit the Ushers. And then when they come to the house, they meet a mycologist, somebody who's studying fungi. And this is a British lady. She's focused on what she wants to study, and it's set far enough back in time that she is not allowed to join the science societies that are full of men. She's not allowed to present her research. So she's doing the work and not being able to receive any recognition or credit for it. And she's just like a stiff upper lip British person. In fact, let me see if I can find a quote that I highlighted about her because, again, like the digs at American, this dig at British made me laugh. It was, the English, in my experience, make an enormous deal about the most minor inconveniences, but if you confront them with something world-shattering, they do not blink. And that made me chuckle as well, because it's pretty true. What happens in The Fall of the House of Usher? I didn't tell you. Basically, Alex gets a letter from somebody they knew in the past in both versions of the story, and the letter intimates that Roderick Usher, the brother, or Madeline Usher, the sister, is about to die. And because Alex knows both Roderick and Madeline, they come to see them. You know, the letter doesn't ask them to come, but they do come, feeling like the obligation that they have to. And then it turns out weird things are happening. Madeline, in the What Moves the Dead, is sleepwalking. She's been diagnosed with catalepsy, which is like falling into a catatonic state. And she's clearly dying. She's wasting away. And then one night she does die. And spoilers from here on in, she doesn't stay dead. And that's a bit scary. And so Alex and the American doctor who's there, I can't remember his name, and the British mycologist, they try and work out what is happening and fit that, what is happening to Roderick and Madeline, inside the broader story of the folk tales of creepy things that are happening around the Usher estate. If you're it's probably not spooky season by the time this goes onto the internet, but if you're in the mood for horror, gothic horror, I recommend. That's the only thing that I finished this week, but I have been listening to things, although not much, because it's been just the kind of time at work where you come home and then you scroll mindlessly on Instagram for half an hour and then you go to bed. So not much reading has happened. I'm currently still listening to Death of a Hollow Man, which is a Midsummer Murders mystery by Carolyn Graham. I'm very familiar with the TV adaptation of this one. It is set in the amateur dramatic society. And so a lot of the story has got introducing all the players in, like all the actors and behind the scenes people in the dramatic society, how they interact with each other, how they interact in their home lives. And then it got to the murder at halfway through the story, which is a long time to wait for a murder. And this book is really about the people who are involved in the murder rather than the TV show, which is about Inspector Barnaby. It's called Inspector Barnaby in a lot of territories. So that is an interesting difference between the story I'm familiar with and the books. So we've got a murder. The leading actor has been killed on stage in the final scene of opening night of Amadeus, slits his neck with a straight edge razor and dies on stage. And now Inspector Barnaby, who was in the audience because his wife Joyce was part of the production, was literally on stage with the man as he slit his throat. Barnaby was there on the scene, and now he's doing the process of working out who was the murderer and why. And I'm having fun with it because I don't remember who the murderer was in this one. I know he dies, but I don't remember who killed them or why, except that they were probably arse-hats. So that's a common theme in Midsomer Murders. So it's good in that way, but also some of the characters that, you know, when you have a TV show that you love and you fall in love with the characters, or like you become fond of them, they're not the same in the book, which makes sense, but I don't like them in the book. I can see why the character of Troy, the detective sergeant, is toned down for the TV show because he's a rampant homophobic sexist pig, and I don't like him at all. And Barnaby's daughter, Cully, in the TV show, she's very much a side flavour character to give Barnaby a rounded home life. But in the book, she's quite caustic and acidic, and how you would expect a 21-year-old girl to be sometimes. Sometimes they are vicious. Sometimes. So not having as much fun with it as I thought I would, but I'm still listening to it and happy to keep going with it. Also, I love this one. This is a book that I bought this week and that I started reading straight away. It's a book club pick for my Sword and Laser book club. It is called A Night in the Lonesome October by Roger Zelazny. It was published in 1993, so it's pretty vintage by now. And it's just adorable. I was actually waiting for my local indie bookstore to get it in so I could have a physical copy, because I had read the Kindle sample chapters when the book pick was announced for October, and I thought, this is delightful and I want to own a real copy. But the bookstore couldn't get me a copy before the end of November, so I did end up buying it on Kindle, which sucks, but that's okay. Now I can hunt for a secondhand copy in my own time. I would love to tell you what's happening in this book, and I don't know. It's one of those books where I'm enjoying hanging out with the main POV character so much that it doesn't bother me that I don't really know what is happening. The main character is a dog called Snuff and is clearly an animal familiar to a sorcerer or magician, someone who uses magic, and they are part of what they call the game. And as the story unfolds, you begin to learn what the game is. And I'm not going to tell you because that would be spoilers. And also I don't really know. I can guess at it, but I don't know at this point. And so Snuff has his human master, but then he also is part of the game, does some problem solving apart it, interacts with the animal familiars of all the other players of the game, and they have they swap info and they investigate together, and it's a bit of a trading knowledge for favors and trying to get ahead, but also making friendships at the same time. And then the friendships have to come apart because it turns out they're on opposing factions in the game when shit starts to hit the fan, which it is about to do. And I'm just really enjoying it. I'm really having fun hanging out with Snuff, where he goes on his patrol and he helps his master acquire like body parts and bones and different things for whatever it is they're trying to do. I think, like I said, I'm not going to give spoilers, but there's two factions, the openers and the closers, and it sounds like they're trying to open a portal or keep the portal closed. Stakes are getting higher, but it doesn't feel like a book where the dog dies at the end. I don't know, I haven't looked up any sort of spoiler or trigger warning, but there's Snuff and his bestie Greymane, who's a cat, and they're on opposing factions, and there's a snake and a rat and a bat and a squirrel and a bird, albino bird and an owl and a werewolf, a guy who can change between human and wolf form, and all the masters, the humans of these animals, are different archetypes. Like there's a druid and a vampire and a corrupt demonic vicar. There's a doctor who clearly has created a Frankenstein-like monster. But it's not clear because we're just getting the point of view of Snuff, who's been in the game before, so none of it's new. Why would he have to relate the story? And he only gets the knowledge that he's acquired, and we learn that at the same time as he learns that. So anyway, it's a very character-driven story, and I really like that in a story, and I'm having a lot of fun. I will report back when I finished it next week because I'm flying through it. It's the kind of book where I really have to turn off the Kindle when it is past reasonable time to be asleep and go to sleep. I'm having that much fun. The other book that I bought was that sequel to What Moves the Dead. It's called What Feasts at Night. Don't have a blurb. Let's find the blurb. Again, by T. Kingfisher. Let me just do a little on-the-fly redaction of the blurb in case there's spoilers for the first one. The follow-up to T. Kingfisher's best-selling gothic novella, What Moves the Dead, retired soldier Alex Easton returns in a horrifying new adventure. After their terrifying ordeal at the Usher Manor, Alex Easton feels as if they just survived another war. All they crave is rest, routine and sunshine, but as a favour to Angus, I think that's the American doctor, and Miss Potter, the British mycologist, they find themselves heading to their family hunting lodge deep in the cold, damp forests of their home country, Galicia. In theory, one can find relaxation in even the coldest and dampest of Galician autumns, but when Easton arrives, they find the caretaker dead, the lodge in disarray, and the grounds troubled by a strange, uncanny silence. The villagers whisper that a breath-stealing monster from folklore has taken up residence in Easton's home. Easton knows better than to put too much stock in local superstitions, but they can tell that something is not quite right in their home or in their dreams. Perfect for the end of spooky season, and just because I'm in the mood, maybe summer just puts me in the mood for gothic horror. Who can say? So I'm looking forward to reading that one next. So that, I hope, was short and sweet and coherent. I can always tell when I'm tired because when I make these videos and edit these videos, I stumble a lot over my words. That's just my disability coming out to say hello. This weekend is one where I don't have to work. I only work every second weekend, so that hopefully will be some time for rest and stitching. I'm working on a cross stitch and finishing this Barnaby book. I've got 5 hours left to go. What does the app tell me? 5 hours and 14 minutes left. That is achievable on the weekend if I didn't want to do anything else. So we'll see. Also, I don't know if I'm going to pick up the next one. I'm thinking about it. I love the show so much, even though it is so entirely silly, but I'm not loving the books as much, and maybe it's time to move on to something else. That feels like a next week problem. I hope you have had an excellent week and have an excellent week ahead of you, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.